Women are powerful creators. The Align Women podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Amy Evans. I have authentic, intimate conversations with my guests that highlight their paths to success, their struggles and accomplishments, and the things that currently excite, motivate, and inspire them to turn their visions into reality. Welcome to the Align Women podcast. I'm Amy Evans, your host and the founder of Align Women, a leadership and networking organization for professional women. The podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. And with me today is Judy Hoberman. Judy's president of Selling in a Skirt, which can already tell you why I love her. She's a licensed life and health insurance agent, a certified virtual presenter, an author, and even cooler, a TEDx speaker. She's also a powerful voice for women in sales and leadership. Welcome to the podcast, Judy.
Thank you so much. I am super excited to be here, Amy.
So I have some fun questions for you. First, I would love to hear about the panel of exceptional leading women, how that started and how it evolved as time went by, because I know it became something much more than you were originally expecting. So tell me about that.
So when the pandemic started in March, everybody's life changed. Everybody. And I don't care who you are, your life changed. And what we were finding is that people were feeling less than connected. So 2 weeks into this, because my background is financial, a lot of my colleagues were saying, are you going to do anything that can highlight us? Because it's hard to have these conversations online. So I thought, I'm going to do a panel. And I picked 4 women that were in different areas of financial services. One was a CEO of a company. One was a wealth management, all the different pieces of it. And it was awesome. I mean, Amy, it was awesome. And when we were done, Amy, it was an hour. And when we were done, it was done, because that's what it was. And then I got the phone calls and the texts asking, who's coming on next? When's the next one? And I thought to myself, I have no plan to do another one. So I said, next Thursday, because it was on a Thursday. And I thought, okay, so now I have a week to figure this out. And so I reached out my little circle in front of me, and I reached out to 4 different women, 4 different industries, and said, do you want to be on a panel? And after that, I never reached out to anybody. I got referrals coming in and out from different people. That's how I, was introduced to you, from a referral. And so 12 weeks later, we wrapped it up. And, we had probably through the 12 weeks, like 600 or 700 people that have been on the panels. And so what we're going to do is just do a big reunion, have all the panelists come back, and we're going to share it one more time. I just said we ride one more time. And it's going to be so everybody can connect with each other. Because if you were on week 2, you might not have met the participants from week 10. Right. So we're connecting everybody and making sure that really what it was a labor of love. It was a passion project to connect women. Started in financial, ended up everywhere. But financial was really where it started. So.
Yeah, and I was honored to be one of the panelists, and I had attended a few of the panels that other people were on, and you have an incredible talent for asking questions, and I am in awe of your ability, and I know you've heard that feedback before, so that has certainly informed me and shaped me in how I ask my questions on the podcast. So I appreciate being able to observe you in that area. I will tell you too, and I don't think you know this, that I was on a panel with Abby Haberman, delightful, also here in Los Angeles, and Janice Gordon, who is in London. Yep. And they're both going to be future guests on the podcast. I've already extended the invitation and they're already booked. So the connections that you made, even on the 4 women that you put together who didn't know each other, have already blossomed. And I'm sure you've heard lots of feedback like that.
Well, that's what I wanted to make sure, is that every week, right before your panel was on, I would connect the 4 women on LinkedIn and said, please check each other out, just so you know who's on your panel. And every week somebody would say, oh my goodness, I wanted to meet her. Oh my goodness, we're so much alike. I know that you and Abby, when you first met, was like, okay, BFFs, here we go. Janice and I have known each other for a while, and it's just so funny how all these chess pieces you just move them around the board and the world gets smaller and smaller and overlaps. So I'm thrilled. So I'm glad.
It does. I describe it as a Venn diagram. I love the old Venn diagrams from school. So your Venn diagram, your network of women and my network of women have now overlapped and are combining. And I think that's so much fun. I'll also warn you, based on my experience with Align Women and setting up the first networking masterminds, which is how Align Women was born, when you tap into something that a bunch of women want and need and are enthusiastic about, you're gonna have a runaway train pretty quickly. So I think you've experienced that, and I think it's wonderful. And who knows what will happen from there?
Yeah, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Lots of opportunities.
Lots of opportunities. So let's talk about a little bit of your background, because you have a really interesting background and one that I can relate to, because you built a successful career in insurance sales, which at the time you were in it was a male-dominated industry. And I would say that probably hasn't changed dramatically, although we have some more women in leadership and more women who have discovered that commission sales don't have a glass ceiling, which is one of my favorite things about being 18 years in this business. So after you were in insurance sales, you built a new organization that supports women in sales. You wrote a book called Selling in a Skirt, which I love. And I want to know from you, what's one natural ability that you think women have and an ability that they can develop in order to help them excel in a sales career?
Well, the biggest one in any sales career, and especially in financial services, is relationships. And if you do nothing else, build relationships, because a lot of things will happen. First of all, people will trust you. And when someone trusts you, they will open themselves up to be part of your circle. And so they introduce you to lots of other people because they want you to be close. The second thing is that if you need something, there's always a resource because you've built a relationship. And I always tell people, build relationships before you need them, because once you need them, it's probably too late. So it's not to say that men don't build relationships, but they are more transactional. Studies have shown they're more transactional. They want the transaction and then they build a relationship, maybe, sort of, kind of, maybe. But women build the relationship first. If they need something, and they need it quickly, they may not take as much time, but I guarantee you, if there is no relationship coming up, they're out. They'll find somebody else that does what you do. So if there's nothing else that somebody can do, it's build a relationship. Because I was the number one producer, the number one sales leader, the number one agency manager, the number one recruiter, and I never sold anything. All I did was have conversations and built relationships. That's it.
Yep. I love that. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm going to throw a little curveball at you because I wanted to add something and get your feedback on this. I've been incredibly impacted by the book How Women Rise by Sally Helgeson, which outlines 12 habits that women learn, are taught, or socialized to adopt, like be likable, be polite, don't make noise. Things that we grow up with and probably don't even realize we carry around that can hamper our success in our careers. And she does a really lovely job of breaking down how those habits don't serve us and the changes that we can make to our behavior to move us forward. And one of the things that she talks about in the relationship section that was probably my biggest aha moment, because some of the other habits I've managed to untangle, but this one, she talked about women being really good at building relationships, but not being so adept at leveraging them. And that word leverage really, really stuck with me as an aha moment for, right, like I can meet lots of people and have a really big Rolodex, but how can I actually use that to move my career forward? And I wonder if you have some thoughts on leverage and what that looks like in hand with relationship building.
So one of the things I remember when I first moved to Dallas was we were at this fundraiser meeting. I was on the committee or whatever. And I remember distinctly hearing that they needed to raise more money. And so I looked over here, and here was this group of men. They were all wearing the same ring, which means they went to the same school. And there's only two schools in Texas that you go. You either here or here. And I'm not sure which one is this or that. I just know there's two. And all of them with the same ring. It was almost like they took their power bracelets, picked up the phone, and they got the money.
Yeah.
Okay. They knew how to leverage their relationships. Women, on the other hand, also have a very weird relationship with money. So here you have one thing where they can't leverage, but they also can't ask for money. So that's a terrible combination. So you have to figure out how to get behind that. But leveraging, if you have the kind of relationship that you can talk to somebody and you can say to them, you know what, we need your support, or we need to have this, or do you know anybody? You have to learn how to ask. And I think it's the asking part that is the most difficult, and that's why we can't leverage the relationships. I have learned that very quickly that I have no problem asking anymore. I just don't. I will say, Amy, look, I'm doing something and I need your help. Or I can't do this technology. I was just on an interview. Here's a perfect example. And this is the second time we tried to do this. And the second time we had the same exact technology problem. We both shut down, we both rebooted, we did all of this stuff. And she said, I just did 3 interviews and we had no problem. So I thought, this is craziness. Of course, I looked everything up. And then all I did was I said to my husband, can you just come here for 1 second? Because I cannot do this. And he walked in, he looked at the setting and he said, I bet it's this, click, and it worked. So I don't care who it is. If I can't do something, I ask. I'm not afraid to. Therefore, I can leverage relationships because I ask for whatever I need. Not afraid. But it takes a while to get to that point. That's the hard part.
That's the beauty about your experience, is that confidence and that ability really shows in you. And I love that about you because it's something that I want to emulate, and it's fun to learn from you just watching you interact with other people. Something that the book pointed out in a story about leveraging was about a woman in a sales role who had no problem contacting people that she had known in her past, in her career, to ask for money for a fundraising event. But she had a total block when it came to asking for an introduction that would help her make a sale. And I thought that was also a really good observation, that if women are doing it on behalf of someone else, it seems much easier. But when they're doing it on behalf of themselves, that's a lot harder. And I think that's a really important habit to learn how to break.
You just have to start really small. Think of something that isn't so difficult to ask for and just start asking for it. One of my agents, I remember, she said she had to figure out how she was going to start asking for money because it was hard for her. So she started asking for discounts whatever store she went into. And she would say something like, do you give a good customer discount? And they would look at her and she said, I'm in here all the time. Don't I get a good customer discount? And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they would give it to her.
Wow.
And so once she started doing that, it was much easier. My coach told me, look in the mirror and say it out loud into the mirror, whatever, pick a number. It's $25,000 and here's what's included. Even if your product is $100, big number. It's $25,000, here's what's included. And she said, when you can say it without coughing and sneezing and choking and giggling and whatever else, you're able to ask for it, right? And so there's the part of it that, however you practice, talk to your dog. It doesn't matter. If you keep practicing, eventually it's going to come second nature. And then you're able to ask for what you need.
I love that tip. That is a tip that's also in the book, and it recommends getting an accountability partner and flexing that muscle, learning how to flex that muscle, and that's a fantastic way to learn how to break a habit. So let's talk about your newest book, which is called Walking on the Glass Floor, and it is 7 essential qualities of women who lead, which that's so yummy to me. So I want to know from you, of the 7 qualities that you describe in the book, which one do you think is the hardest for most women to master, and why?
I would say, I think there's a few, but I think decisiveness is the hardest because it means that you're making a choice that may not always be popular. And as a leader, that's one of the things you have to do. You can't always assume everybody's going to love you because they're not, but you have to make choices. And a lot of times we'll say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, which is not true. So, when you don't make a decision, that's also a decision that you've made. And one of the things in the book that I wrote about was when my daughter would come here for business, she would say, what do you want to do for dinner? And I would say, doesn't matter. I don't care. Well, in reality, it does matter because I'm a vegetarian. So it does matter. There's certain things that I can eat and I can't eat. So why do I say that? Because I don't want to waste time on that. I want to be able to spend time with her. It's the same thing. When you're a leader, you just want to get through something. But if it's not, if you don't make the decision, no one's going to make the decision. And, so I think that's the hardest one for women, is actually getting up there and saying, this is the direction we have to go in. I know it's not what you thought, but I promise you, here is what's going to happen, and it's going to be the best for us. So you have to be able to say it with authority and just do it.
It's so good. It so resonates with me. The way that I struggle with decisiveness is I want to poll everybody. If I have a group of 10 people and I have that sounds familiar. So I have a decision that is totally within mine to make as a leader. And I think, I'll send a survey out and I'll ask everybody what they think and get their opinion. And I have had people who know me well stop me and say, you are the leader and you have the authority to make this decision. Make it. It is not in their hands. It is in yours to make. And I have to remind myself of that. And I still catch myself thinking, I'll just ask a few people what they think. And embracing my role as a leader has involved me being really, really mindful of that.
Yeah. And it's not easy. And even when you think you got it, sometimes you don't. But the truth of the matter is, you save the surveys for when you need it, when you really need opinions, because otherwise it's going to be another one. Oh, she's got another survey. And but I hear you, because it's much easier. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then you lose your credibility half the time. You can't even make one.
You're abdicating your role as a leader.
Right. And who wants to do that?
It's really undermining your leadership role. So which of the 7 qualities has been the hardest for you?
I think the hardest one for me is courage. Because, there's a lot of things I've done in my life that people say, oh my goodness, you're so courageous. And I just think I'm totally nuts sometimes. But I have to own that, because some of the things I've done, like going into this field in 1990 when there were no women, and doing something as a single mom, 100% commission, like all the things you could think of that would possibly deter you, I did it anyway. Or leaving, after I went through all, everything, I had 3 agencies of my own, and I was offered a position in a corporate office, which I'd never done before. So I jumped and I did that. And then being there, knowing it was not the right thing for me, I had to, again, jump. And so the courage that it takes to do that, you have to really, dig deep and say, I can do this. And it doesn't matter what people think about me or anything like that. But I think that was the hardest one for me, was to actually own the fact that what I was doing was courageous. Some of the things I do today, people think I'm absolutely insane. And then other people think I'm the most courageous person, wishing they were like me. And I'm like, be careful what you wish for.
My husband has a wonderful point about courage, that it's really only courage in hindsight. It's really only courage after it's played out. So I think people use the word courage with an assumption that you made the decision in the moment feeling courageous. And you probably didn't in the moment. You felt crazy. You felt wild. You felt impulsive. You felt whatever, and maybe fearful. And then in hindsight, looking back at all the pieces when they came together, you realize that it was a courageous thing to do. But courage exists in hindsight.
It does. And I did not feel courageous till, years later. Years later, when I look back and go, maybe I was courageous.
So I can relate so much to the stories that you tell. I love it. So I asked you where you still struggle. It's related to that last question. And you said something I really liked. You said, I have very high expectations for myself. And sometimes I struggle with realizing that I set those expectations for myself. No one needs to keep that standard, and I can change it if I want to. So how do you give yourself the space to take a step back and give yourself room to have that realization? Because I know I do the same. I put high standards on myself, but I'm already so far into them, into the execution of them, into the stress about getting it done, that taking that step back and giving myself permission to change it is a really hard thing to do. How does that process work for you?
So it doesn't work easily. It really doesn't work easily because I know what I am able to accomplish. I do things, if somebody asks me to do something, I do something quickly and make sure it's done correctly. And I try, I reread and reread things before I send it out just to make sure that it's perfect, because I am also a recovering perfectionist. But when somebody doesn't do something that I would do, I just can't understand it. And so at one point I had to decide, is it just me or is it everybody else who's just really not even trying? And it was just me that had these standards. And so what I have to do is I have to stop as the words are coming out of my mouth. Well, why can't he do it? Or why can't she do it? As the words are starting to come out of my mouth, I have to stop and I have to say, this is my expectations of myself, not of them. And I have to give them permission to do it the way that they would do it. Now, if I do believe that there's a coachable moment, at some point, I will ask permission if I can give them some coaching. If it's something that I really think is constructive, not destructive, because I can say, oh my God, Amy, I can do this in like 13 minutes. Why can't you? Would be destructive. But if I knew, and I'll give you a great example. When I had my agency in North Carolina, the woman that worked for me, we had to put together our own recruiting packs. And the packs had like 25 sheets to them. And so I watched her putting these together. And she would take one, and then she would take another sheet. And I was like pulling my hair out because I could do them really like in 13 minutes. So I said to her, you know what? When I first started, I did it exactly how you're doing. Can I show you something that gave me like hours of freedom? She said, oh God, I wish you would. And so I did it. I would show how I would deal it out on the floor. Boom, 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 boom. She said, oh my goodness, I can't believe nobody ever showed me this. Okay, so it worked in my favor. Had I just said, let me just do it, she would have been annoyed. So I have to, go back and give myself the permission not to say anything and to know it's me, but I also have to give other people permission to do it the way they choose to. It's not very easy. My husband will point it out to me many times. Just because you can do it so quickly or just because you get it so quickly doesn't mean other people do. So he's kind of my barometer.
Yes. I have one of those who works that way for me as well. Yeah. He also has a phrase that is one of the most valuable that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, which is give people the dignity of their own experience.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people just have to go through it in a different way than you could have done. And allowing them the dignity of that experience is something about that phrase, and the word dignity allows me a level of grace that I had not been able to find before.
So I love that. I love that. The other thing that my daughter and I always say is when you expect people to do exactly what you would do and they don't, you get disappointed. So stop expecting people to do things the way you do them. So, but I love the word dignity, so I will be borrowing that.
Please feel free. So I want to wrap up by having you tell me about your next project, because I think you've probably always got a project or 12 going on. So tell me about the Women's Virtual Roundtable.
So this originally came to be, was supposed to be launched in March, and we know what happened in March. And so I pulled it back and I had to revamp it because it was supposed to be an in-person group of women, like-minded professional women who would be each other's personal board of directors. And so I pulled it back, and now it's 100% virtual. And we have the first group starting on Friday, which is like so exciting. And it's really about best practices. It's really about business. It's really about, sharing your innermost thoughts. It's about the highlights of your life. It's about the high points of your life. And it's also about the challenges that you have. So this is a group of women who really, really want to get to that next level, but they don't have a safe place. And they also feel disconnected, which is where everybody feels today. So we're starting one on Friday. We've got a couple of more in the works that they'll start every few weeks. And I'm like totally thrilled about it. Totally thrilled.
I will be sure that we include a link for that in the show notes so that people can get more information about it, as well as links to your books and a link to your TEDx talk, which I confess to you, I went and found on on YouTube before we even had our first call because I was so tickled to meet a woman who had done a TEDx talk, and it was fabulous. So I can't wait to share that with everybody. So if people want to reach you, where can they find you?
So if you just remember selling in a skirt, everything is selling in a skirt. So it's, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, my website. The only thing that isn't selling in a skirt is LinkedIn. And so that would be Judy Hoberman. So, but either Judy Hoberman or Selling in a Skirt, you'll find me everywhere. I'm very consistent on social media. I post every single day before 7 a.m. Central. And if I don't, I'll get phone calls asking if I'm sick. So. You
are very consistent, and you always have wonderful, thoughtful posts.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining me on the Align Women podcast today, Judy. It has been a delight to have you, and I could talk with you for hours. I really appreciate it.
I feel the same way. I feel like we've known each other forever.
Right? Well, maybe we have. Who knows? So look for more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Align Women podcast. You can find more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com. And visit alignwomen.org to learn more about our leadership and networking organization. This is Amy Evans, and you've been listening to the Align Women podcast.